Here I've got a mackerel. I thought I would taxidermy this instead for my EPQ because there's a few reasons. So it's a much slimmer fish, so it won't be as difficult to make a foam, support for it on the inside. And it doesn't have scales, or it does, but they're very, very small, as you can see. So it makes it easier to to not mess up the scales when I'm cutting into it. So I've decided that this side's going to be the show side, so I'm going to make a wall mount for it, and I'm going to put, it's going to be mounted on this side, so I'll cut open here and remove all of its innards, and I'll remove all of the meat from its the cheek and the face. Another reason I chose a mackerel is they don't have much meat in the face, and they also don't make too many natural oils, so it should be quite a quick drying process. But I've decided to use this side because, as you can see here, the jaw actually it got snapped, which is quite annoying, but it's okay because that can all be mounted back when it's on the board. But if I use this side has got the fin's got some rips in it, so I'm gonna clip off these and I'm gonna start working my way down and taking the flesh out of here, and then it will be sat for about a week for the drying process, and then I'll come back with an air gun, and I will fill it with foam, and then I'll come back with an air gun and repaint it, because I also like the way I think this will look very cool when it's done, because it's got some really nice natural colours on it, and patterns. So I'll keep it like this. I've already in the process already. I've sprayed off the slimy coating that fish have, and now I'm going to remove its eyes and the meat from its face, what meat there is from its face. So yeah, I'll take pictures along the process. I've hacked away at it a bit, and it's not a very pretty sight, but I've removed the eyes and the most of the meat from the head cavity. I need to scrape a bit more out, but I started off with, so because this side's going to be the mounted side and the other side's going to be the show side, I cut one of the fins off. As you can see there, the fin was ripped, and so that means that when it's fully dried, it makes it much more difficult to lay it out flat like that, because if the fin's ripped, it will shrink when it's dried, and it will end up looking something like that, and it would be relatively unsalvageable. So what I've done here is I've cut through the meat right down to the tail, and then I'm gonna start. Basically, I'm gonna take my knife. Underneath the skin and remove as much meat as possible, and then I'm gonna gut it, and I'm gonna get all of this meat out without disturbing this other side. So I'm gonna try not to puncture it or anything. The good thing about a mackerel is they're not very difficult to fix because the scales are really, really minute. So if I do put a hole in it, I mean, this is the mount side, so this is slightly more experimental. But when I was taking some of the meat out of the cavity, I severed down here. Might be able to see, but it's okay because this side's going to be mounted anyway. So what I'm going to do now, as I said, is you can see that thin layer of skin there. I'm going to take this this knife underneath, and I'm going to separate the flesh from the skin. And I had a first attempt on a sea bass, and I was expecting to use an artificial head for that, but I redid it because it was a poor attempt, and I've decided to just go with the original head. I have taken out quite a bit of the meat from the hidden side of the fish, So as you can see, I've basically taken out its whole like stomach cavity, and I'm working on separating the meat from the flesh. And I've just snapped the spine, which I've done it in a bit of an unconventional way. I probably should have snapped it right at the top and then cut it down at the bottom, but I just found it easier to get under it and then separate the meat from the other side. And there are probably quite a few people that were wondering why I'm actually doing this in the first place. And I'm quite into my fishing. I like fishing quite a bit. Let me cover this up so it's not super gross. But I like my fishing, and you know, the first attempt I had, we caught a bass, and I was thinking it's not a very big bass, but they're cool animals. Like they're nice looking things. For example, this mackerel is a good example. Look at the colours on it, and look at how it like shines and stuff. I think they're majestic, but I just wanted to experiment with it because I just wanted to try something that I've never done before, and it's, you know, I think it will look good, you know, final result. But yeah, I think it's working quite well so far. You won't be able to see through the mouth cavity. So the end goal is basically keep the mouth as it is, prop the mouth open like that, and I'll have to use some glue or something to fix that. But I can fix all of that once the drying process is done. Yeah, I want to make a wall mount for it, and as you can see, I've made a few small mistakes. So that's a cut from my knife by accident, and there's a few bits. You can see the skin starting to wrinkle there because I've cut a bit too close to the skin, and then there's like a tiny little puncture there, but that's okay because that's actually under the skin, because the mackerel have like all of the colouring underneath, and then there's like a clear membrane on top, and you can see that through the eye socket. So here it looks like it's got some depth, but that's all the same height. It's just it's got this like clear membrane. It's almost a bit jelly like, but it's just like the skin. So yeah, I've removed quite a bit of the meat, and then when it comes to it, I'll fill it with foam, and I will stitch this back together, or staple it. I'm not really sure yet, and I will mount it onto a big wooden board and hang it up on the wall. And my primary tool that I'm using is my Victorinox knife, and I like this one because it's relatively long blade and it's really sharp. So it had absolutely, you know, it sliced through the skin with ease, and it's the only problem that I'm having a little bit is that it's slightly too sharp when I want to get really close to the skin. You can see an example of it down here where I've cut too close to the skin and I've taken the pigment off. For this side it doesn't matter too much because it's this is going to be the mounted side, so it's not too much of a problem. But on the other side I need to be careful with it, because if I take the pigment off, then it will just be, all you'll see is the foam on the inside. And I'm also using this knife has a built-in toothpick. I haven't used it before, don't worry. And I am going to be I use that a bit to kind of really separate the like really tight bits, like some in there, and separating the skin from the like bone, because obviously the spine goes right up through here, and so you've got to be extra careful when you're cutting through the ribs and stuff. You've got to be extra careful when you're cutting up through here, because you could, you know, come out through the fins and stuff. So yeah, this fin's slightly torn, but it's okay because I can just use some like parchment paper to cover it up and then paint over it. It won't be the end of the world. Now I've taken out the main body, so I've taken out a lot of meat, as you can see there and there. I mean, I might cook that up, you know, I might make some food out of it. There's quite a nice fillet there. But sorry, that's right. But Yeah, so this is a very, very delicate fish, and it's a very, very delicate part of the taxidermy process. So you can see here these nicks where I've gone too deep, and it reflects on the other side. So if I flip it over, it's got to be very gentle. If I flip the fish over, okay, so now I'm gonna do an update. So what I did was I hollowed it out, and I got rid of, you know, the majority of the remainder meat, and I am going to, like, I left it out for a bit because it helps it kind of, now the meat's firmed up a bit, like what's left of it, so it makes it much easier to kind of scrape out. And I'm also, like, you can see that there's a few nicks, like as I mentioned in previous videos, or in previous clips, I mean. But you can see that there's all this like silver skin here that I need to pull out, which is a pain. But now it's all kind of firmed up a bit. It peels off the skin quite a lot easier. So now I can focus more on getting rid of all of the rest of it. And one of my main goals for this stage is, like, I'm actually more worried about there being meat left in. Like, see these spines here, these need to come out, because there's meat in between them. And once all the meat's out, I can focus on it drying. But I'm more worried about leaving meat in here. Like, there's still quite a lot in the head. Like, I need to basically get through the brain cavity. But the one thing that I don't want to do is to sever the gills, because the gills dry quite nicely and then you can repaint them, and they're quite a nice kind of showpiece. So I need to do that, and then yeah, I mean, if I leave meat in, it will rot and it will be unusable. So, and if I, you know, nick the skin like that, I can repair it afterwards. I can paint over it. So I'm more worried about leaving meat in. But I need to scoop out the head. What remainder meat there is, like, there's still quite a bit of meat up there and like there, and then I need to take my knife and work up into the brain cavity and basically scoop out, like, hollow out everything that's in here. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to use some cardboard to prop it up so it's kind of relatively in its original shape, so it doesn't, you know, if it's lying flat like this, it's already started to happen a bit here, but I left it slightly, it's only been left here for about an hour, but I left it ever so slightly folded over by accident, and now it's kind of taken that shape. It doesn't matter too much for this one, because it's this is the back side, so what it should end up looking like will be, here I'll show you, will be, so this side it will be filled with foam, but this side will, you know, be all open, and then I'll just stitch it up from there. And then this side will be kind of, you know, it will be thick like that. Oh, sorry, I don't know why it's not focusing. And then I did a bit more work to the head. I hollowed it out a little bit more. And so there's actually not much meat left in there at all. I just need to go in a little bit more and sorry, the recording cut off. But yeah, so I need to go and scoop some more meat out of the head, which won't be too difficult because there isn't much in there. I can feel it and I can see it, and there's not really anything left. And then I need to let it dry, and then I need to make the form for the inside out of foam. And I think the drying time will take about 2-3 days maybe to fully dry, depending on how, like, oily this fish is. And I think actually it's seeming more that mackerel are quite oily fish, so I think it would take longer than what I originally anticipated to be doing, which was a sea bass. But it's alright, it's all a learning process. So it's really not looking nice now. It looks a bit looks quite gory. It's just because of all of the meat that I've scraped out. So what we have here now is the fish pretty much, you know, picked of all the meat I can. So I've scraped all of the meat off the actual flesh, being as careful as possible. And now what I'm going to do is prepare it for drying. So if you can see, I've left basically all I've left in the head. I took the rest of the spine out and I've shaved away all of the meat, and all I've left is pretty much just the esophagus and the gills. Because if you think about it, when it's going to be mounted, the mouth is going to be mounted open, and you don't want to lose all of the inside of its mouth because it just won't look even remotely realistic. So what I'm going to do with it now is I've been just experimenting with it a bit, and I'm going to pack it with some just like kitchen roll, and I'm going to, you know, prop it up in the position that I want it to dry in with some cardboard, and I'm gonna toothpick through the skin into here, so it stays in that position when it dries. And then when it's fully dried, I will take this out and I'll replace it with with a foam cutout, so it'll be more rigid and it'll be smoother as well. And yeah, so hopefully it should be dry in about 2 days maybe. So what I've done now is I've basically taken a wedge of paper, and I have shoved it inside, so it's relatively to the right size. I mean, it could be a bit, you know, it needs to be pushed up a bit. Sorry for the very, very poor camera work. It's relatively to the right size, but it doesn't need to be perfect because, as I say, it's just the drying phase. So this is what it looks like from the other side, and that's what it will roughly look like at the end. The skin will look a bit neater and tighter because the infill is going to be, you know, better. So what I've done is I've put a box here. I need to sort this. Sorry, it's pretty difficult doing this with one hand. I've put a box with a bunch of bubble wrap in to kind of support it upright, so the skin doesn't sag and it doesn't, you know, and also so it's just kind of supported a bit. So what I need to do with this is leave that in there exactly like that, halfway to it being fully taxidermied. So yeah, that's going to be in there now for the next 2 days, and I need to make sure that skin isn't folded over. Oh well. Yeah, so that's where we're at. When it's fully dried, the things I will expect is that the skin and fins will shrink a bit, and the what was I going to say? What was the other thing? It will be, yeah, it's just a waiting game to find out if it will smell alright and it will be perfectly dry, or if it will be just gross and like diseased. So what I'm going to do is, it's not going to give it much covering from the rain, if it does rain, is I'm going to leave it out here in this box, and oh, for God's sake, okay, sorry about that. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to leave it out here in this box. Sorry, my